Hey everybody, this is Jason Ostrowski, and welcome to another edition of the Everything Real Estate Podcast. I gotta tell you, it's been a little bit of a rough go, and we had to skip a week last week because I actually lost my voice, which is not conducive to putting out a good podcast. So we're coming to you a week late, and I apologize for that, but I think it'll be worth your wait because this week we had on Harry Wooding, and Harry is a teacher for NAR. He teaches the Negotiation Expert Certification course for NAR. And I thought, who better to have on this week than someone that can specialize in giving us some tips and strategies for negotiation. You know, out there in the marketplace right now, we're seeing so many offers time and time again. You know, even going out to listing appointments, we're against competition and negotiation is key. So I thought it would be great to get into it with Harry Wooding today and have a conversation about negotiation. So here's my interview with Harry Wooding. He is an associate broker, an ABR, a GRI, a CRS, an SRES, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if I've met a man with so many accreditations to his name, but his name is Harry Wooding. And Harry, I'm really excited to have you here today for a number of reasons, but how are you today?
I'm doing great, Jason. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the great introduction. It is a pleasure and an honor to talk with you today. You know, what I always start my classes with, those who can do, those who can't teach, and those who can't do either make stuff up. So the listeners can figure out which one they're going to get here when this 30 minutes or so is over. But thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem whatsoever. And the reason why I'm excited to have you today is, of course, you are a teacher of the Negotiation Expert course. And right now in this market, what we need are some tips and strategies for negotiation because it just seems that market right now is so crazy out there. And a lot of times, you know, between our co-ops and different aspects of real estate that we get into requires heavy negotiations. And so anytime that we can kind of steer that negotiation in our direction or make it better for everybody involved, I think that provides value to our agents. So, you know, the first thing that I wanted to ask you, and it was based on our conversation, you and I had a conversation yesterday for a little while over the phone. Yeah. And the first thing that we always hear when it comes to negotiation courses is, you know, the topic of lose-win or win-lose or win-win, quote unquote. Yeah. And you said to me, you don't like that term of win-win. So I wanted to start there. Why is it that you do not like that term?
You know, and I'm probably an old curmudgeon-y old guy who's just gotten the win-win. I think it's been overused. I think it, you know, if you've been in real estate for more than 5 minutes, you know that not anybody's happy today. Your buyers are miserable. The sellers are miserable. I think a term where, you know, if you and I were in negotiations, give a little and give a little is a much better term. So where we can meet somewhere in the middle that, you know, your seller's not going to be happy. My buyer's not going to be 100% happy. But if everybody's in the, you know, comfortable range of acceptability, then we've gotten somewhere. And that to me comes with, you know, if you're the listing agent and I'm the buyer's agent, us working together more than us working at odds with each other, more than, you know, oh, Jason's my adversary, I've got to beat him down. And, you know, when I first got in real estate over 30 years ago, which is hard to believe, so I hate looking at Zoom because I don't feel this old, but when I see myself, I'm like, who is that, you know? And, you know, I think there was a better, we had to do face-to-face. So part of the problem with negotiations today is, are you negotiating in an email? Are you negotiating in a text? Are you negotiating in a, you know, a Facebook message and how do you do that? You know, how do you do that? You know, you can get in the negotiation class, you're looking for signals, you know, flinch, you know, or, oh, I can't do that. And how do you give those over a text message? Mm-hmm. It's not easy. And when I send you a text message, Is it coming across? I kid around a lot. Unfortunately, we couldn't have the class because of the virus, but I like to have fun. I like to make people laugh. So I may say something to you in a text that I think is completely funny. And then when I reread it after I push send, because I'm not smart enough to reread it before I push send, I'm like, oh dear Lord, what have I said to Jason? This is problematic. So in today's environment, I don't know how long you've been doing this, but 30 years ago when I started, they needed us. We were the keepers of the information. We had it all. They had to come through us. I mean, I talk to classes today. Do they really need us? Do you really? Do they? They don't. It's like I use Jiffy Lube as a perfect example. If there was a class of 50 people, or anybody listening or watching this podcast is physically capable of changing their car oil, okay, 99% of the time, I'm probably the only one who's still changing my oil, So I don't want to say real estate has come there, but we're getting there. So what we have is our negotiation skills. We have, if you're my buyer or you're my seller, I have the opportunity to take the emotion. If you're buying a stock or you're buying insurance, there's not a lot of emotion usually involved in it. But if you're selling a home, maybe it's a couple who's raised a family there and there's 30 or 40 years of memories. And so there's a lot going on. And so those negotiation skills are, I think, more important today because the information that's out there, Jason, as you know, I don't have to tell you, you're a real estate expert. You know this business. There is so much information out there. Part of our job is to this is the real information. This is the true information. And this is the fluff, for lack of a better term.
And you bring up, a bunch of good points there. And the one thing I equated to when I talk to a potential client, especially at a listing appointment, is, if you're feeling sick, nowadays you can go online and you can start looking at WebMD. You can go on, the Mayo Clinic, and you can go all these different places and look up your symptoms, potentially get a diagnosis. But that does not mean that you are an expert and you know what you're talking about, or you can navigate through that kind of issue, right? And I feel like that's the same thing in real estate. And you brought up, communication through text, communication through email, which is a completely different medium where there's no body language involved. And like you had said in the beginning, we used to do it face to face, where the majority of how we negotiate is through body language. It's non-communication.
Yeah.
So, starting with those things in today's environment, and we do adopt those kind of things. Are there any tips and strategies, maybe going through email or going through text? Do you recommend anything different than you would someone negotiating face to face?
Personally, I try to at least, face to face today, unless we're doing what we're doing right now, is probably as close as you can get to face to face. Okay. And even outside of the environment we're in right now, let's move back 365 days or maybe more, let's say 18 months. Okay. And you and I are doing a transaction. We still may not get face to face. So my next best step is I like to talk to you on the phone. One of my pet peeves, Jason, is, and I've got 100 of them. If you guys take my class, you'll probably get a lot of my pet peeves. But somebody will send me an offer in an email and not even verify that the offer has gotten there. And to me, that makes, because for some reason I'm a Comcast user, and Comcast sends Yahoo emails to my junk mail sometimes, and I don't even get it. So how do I know? So as a buyer's agent, when I'm a buyer's agent, you're the listing agent, I'm going to call you first. Hey, Jason. And I'm going to start that relationship right from the get-go. Hey, I'm looking forward to working with you. I brought you a half price offer in a hot market. Let's make it happen. Okay. And so it's not easy. And I'm not sure that I can give you in a couple minutes I'd really like to see agents stay away from that, negotiate. Now, if we're going back and forth and we're down to, a couple $1,000s, depending on the price range, I'm all in. I'm all in for going back and forth, because now we're down to we're down to the meat and potatoes, which, at the end of the day, and when I teach pre-license class, I tell the new agents, in the book here, it says it's all about location, location, location. That's wrong. It's all about price, price, price,
Mhm.
and agents today, when I think of negotiations, and I'm sure a lot of agents think of negotiations, is when I get my first offer. But that's not the first negotiation you start with. The first negotiation starts with the seller and being reasonable. A lot of markets are red hot right now. So you can be wrong on price. But if you've been in this business when we went through the bad years, you can't be wrong on price. And so your negotiation starts right there. And never, ever, ever don't negotiate your commission. That should never be a negotiable item. The
Mhm.
simple answer is, and I don't want to get into antitrust, so I'm not going to use numbers, but the simple answer, when they ask you, do you reduce your commission? Will you reduce your commission? No. And then stop talking. Not no. I've got kids in college. My dog needs a new bone. My car's got 3 tires. Just stop talking. We talk too much. Say no, and there'll be some real uncomfortable silence there. And I always bring a cup of coffee because I'll just be sipping my coffee and then move on. But with that said, I can't come in and tell you this is my commission structure. Just pay me. I have to prove value.
Yep.
I have to prove the value in, as you said, you don't know how many terminal illnesses I've had when I look on WebMD, because every time I go, I'm pretty sure I'm dying, and it's just a sinus headache. It's not a brain tumor. Okay. So we have to get into the mode of it starts and negotiation. I'm not a great negotiator because I was born that way, and nobody's born a great negotiator. Okay. It's practice. It's practice. It's falling down. It's getting back up. It's learning from your mistakes. And it's also knowing the negotiator on the other side. If I'm negotiating, what is your style? Once I know your style of negotiation, I'm moving ahead. Okay.
And so you bring up negotiation styles, the last thing that you just said. Well, first things first, actually, I wanted to go back before we get into that. I wanted to go back to what you had talked about. Those, when we're on the listing side right now in this market, we often get what I call phantom offers, right? You have somebody who goes through the property, they don't fill out feedback, they don't follow up with you to say that their client has interest. And then 2 days after their appointment, you get an offer in your inbox. You don't know who it's from. You had no idea that it was coming, but lo and behold, here you go. This is the offer. Doesn't say anything about the client. Doesn't say anything about the offer at hand. It provides no bullet points in the email. It does everything wrong. If we just go back and start from the beginning, I always like to get, and this makes a difference, all things being equal. You want to work with somebody who knows what they're doing. So you want somebody to reach out to you if they're going to be giving you an offer, number one, to build that rapport. Number two, if you're going to write an email, I always like to put bullet points of the major things in the agreement that are going to be in there. So there's no nuance lost. There's no communication lost about what's in that contract. And then number three, it's always good to, like we talk about, just build that rapport with the agent and just say, hey, what is the seller interested in? What is important to the seller? Have that conversation ahead of time. I feel like it goes such a long way when you're presenting an offer in this market. But getting back to the point you just made about different negotiation styles with different personalities, I'm always interested in the psychological aspect of real estate and dealing with someone who tries to be a bully as opposed to somebody who we consider to be fair to both parties. Do you have a different way of negotiating with both of those personalities or personalities in general?
I'm probably the softer approach. I don't do well because, like you said, I don't like bullies. I don't like feel like I'm being railroaded. I don't like, if you and I are in a negotiation and I make you feel like an idiot, what have I accomplished? Maybe it's the teacher in me, maybe it's the way that I learned years ago, but again, I go back to, are we working? And they're out there. I mean, the bullies are out there, and they're the style that I have to win, and I only win when I beat you into complete submission. And again, could be my age, but I think it's good. I don't. It seems to be more prevalent today than it used to be. And that is bothersome to me because there are different styles. And I want to go back to one thing that you said, when on a listing appointment, part of when you're taking a listing is when I first started in real estate, I thought, well, Jason's selling his house. We have to get him the most money. That's what he wants. Instead of just saying, hey, what's your plan here? What are you doing? And this came to light. A member on my team had a price in the market when it was dropping, overvalued, overpriced. And so I went down to meet with this seller, and she had a nice lunch set out for us. And we sat and and finally I said to her, what is your motivation for selling? And she said, well, my first grandchild was just born in California. And I want to live in California. It's in San Francisco, and it's very expensive to live there. And so, I put that information away. So when we got to the conversation about price, I said, your price is too high. And she said, well, I need this to live in San Francisco. It doesn't, I know, and everybody listening knows, it doesn't matter what you need. What's it worth? Mm-hmm. So I waited and I said, I said to her, what grade do you want your grandchild to be in when you move to California? I didn't say what age, because it's just born. I'm thinking kindergarten. She's thinking 5 years. We got the price reduction, house sold. I don't know what she did and, what she moved into. But until we got to her true, what was her real reason for leaving? It wasn't about the money. So it's not always about the money. And I like to move on those things. And as part of my negotiation strategy is to get in my market, I work a beach market, which is second homes, rental properties, on and on. So they're furnished. I don't want to negotiate your living room couch. Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's get all those little things, because as we said at the beginning, it's almost always about the price, what they're willing to pay and where they're willing to go. And for newer agents, and I'm sure you guys are teaching your agents this, but please don't send me a pre-qualification letter for $25,000 over offer price. Okay. Just a tip there for newer agents who said, I just got one the other day, 325 offer, 350 qualified for. I'm like, okay, so we have room to move here.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, some of the most simple things, I think I'm still surprised by when you get a seasoned agent that, should know better and is doing those little things, in my opinion, doing those little things incorrectly. Because in today's market, and, we talked about how it is out there right now, there are certain price ranges up our way where if there is a house that comes on the market, there is going to be 75 showings in 3 days. Yeah. There is going to be, I heard of a house recently that had over 30 offers on it. To win out in that group of agents, you really need to stand out in a bunch of different ways. And so I guess my next question would be, in the market that we're in, and the leverage that the sellers have right now, in many cases, in many price ranges, the sellers are basically getting what they want. How does that affect the negotiation strategy, number one? And number two, is there a specific negotiation strategy or strategies, plural, that can help you to stand out amongst the competition when you are going against, say, a half dozen other offers or a dozen offers?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, what I use is, almost 30 years in the business. So for newer agents, obviously they can't use that. And so sometimes you need to say, okay, I'm on a team or there's so much experience in my office. But I like to use the point of getting the offer on the property in this market right now it's the easy thing to do. It's in most markets. You were talking, I had a property that was a full price offer sight unseen. and that scares me. But that wasn't my buyer, it was my seller. So I'm like, sign now. But they, then they start thinking, oh, you only worked for, you only did, you only had the listing for 5 days, and this is how much you're charging me. And we sell them, we can put it back on the market for another 200 or 300 days overpriced, and I'll work a little harder for you. And then you'll feel like I've earned that commission. You need to lay out, you need to be very specific about, because let's face it, the public's perception of real estate agents is what they see on HGTV. And in HGTV, you look at 3 houses in 30 minutes, and at the end, everybody buys one. In our world, I don't know about your world, but in my real estate world, that rarely happens. There's a lot of bumps. There's home inspections. There's things that the buyers are going to want. And I talk to my sellers about, this is where I'm guiding you through the process and getting you down the road. And in this market, what are you going to do if the buyer brings a full price over asking offer and it's not going to appraise? What are you going to do? So do you know are you going to handle that? Because I will take care of that. But I try to prepare my sellers and my buyers in this market for as much as we can figure out up front, the things that we know. This is going to be an appraisal problem. This is going to be what I think is a home inspection problem. This is going to be whatever the problem may be. So I personally like to prepare, because as you know, and as everybody listening or watching this knows, the problems we get are going to be, there's a lot of problems we don't know that we're going to get that are going to come up in the process. So I like to cover those up front, but you have to be able to sell yourself first. And I hate to use the word sell, but I have to, if I have no value to you, then why are you going to pay me?
And yeah, and you touched upon the selling side and the buying side. Right now, there are scary things on both sides. You mentioned the appraisal issue, because the appraisals always seem to be catching up right now to where the pricing is.
Right.
So setting that expectation with your seller is key. And on the buying side, it's the same thing. When I have a great young couple, first time home buyers right now, that they're awesome to work with. They listen, they're just great. But we always talk about that in this market, it's almost like a game of poker, right? And the royal flush is always going to win. And the royal flush in this market is cash. And whoever has that cash offer, the only thing that's going to beat a royal flush is a royal flush. So since you are not a royal flush, you have to be prepared to go all in on a property if that's what you want. If you really desperately want this house, this is a market where you have to go and get it.
And you've got to look at it 2 minutes after it comes on the market. You can't see it on Wednesday and you come up on Zillow and say, can I make an appointment on Saturday? At least in a lot of my markets right now. And this is where, Jason, that I have used I won't go out now. Back in the day when I started, the phone rang, we ran out the door and met people at the house. First of all, it's a safety issue. Never meet anybody at a house anymore. Obviously, unless you know them and a past client. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about somebody you don't know. Meet them in your office. My buyers, I will not go out with a buyer and show them a house until we've sat down for a 45-minute to a 1 hour buyer oriented, or just going through everything. And it's not really about the buyer. It's about me. This is how I work. I am not available to you 24/7. Don't call me at 2:00 in the morning. Okay. If I tell you a house is going to be gone in 15 minutes, you got to get on it and show it and see it. And all of these things, we've gotten to the point, and again, this goes back to text message and all that. You've got to turn those phones off once in a while, or this business will burn you out. It will. And I don't care how great a negotiator are, because they will always want more. And if you don't set boundaries, treat my buyers like my children. Here's the boundaries. Okay. Don't cross the boundaries unless it's an emergency. An emergency involves blood, and rarely do we see blood in the real estate industry. Okay. So, you've just got to, I like to take care of as many things as I can up front.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think that's the way that you have to do it, or else that causes problems down the line. And, you talk about the buyer consultation or or a listing appointment for that matter. It's about, and you had mentioned this earlier, it's about identifying pleasure and pain, right? What is someone's pain?
Yeah.
What is someone's pleasure in the deal? And you had mentioned the client of yours that was moving out to San Francisco with the grandchildren.
Yes.
That was the pleasure. So it wasn't necessarily about the price. And I think too many times we fall into that trap, especially when we're making an offer right now. You mentioned the appraisals, and a smart agent on the listing side will be like, we may have gotten an offer that's $30,000 over asking, but as you said before, we know it's not going to appraise. So let's take the one that's putting more money down, or maybe, they're waiving inspections instead of going all out on price,
Right.
I just think it boggles my mind that people sometimes don't see through that,
No. No, and we don't take the time to talk to. I mean, we have too many order takers in the business and not enough sales professionals. Okay, I won't bring you an offer in this market at 70% of value because I'm going to tell my buyer, yes, I will present that offer. I'm not going to write it up because I want to keep you anonymous because I'll look stupid. I don't want you to look stupid sending a ridiculous offer to the seller. Okay. Mm-hmm. And some of them get it. Some of them do not. Like, okay, do that. And then they get, oh, so we can't do it. No, you can't do that because it's, and it's the same on the other side, the overpriced. I actually had one time where the agent brought an overpriced offer, and I think it was a strategy. He was head and shoulders above, and I didn't think of it to average. He won, but I was fortunately prepared my sellers like, I'm telling you right now, it's not going to appraise. I hope I'm wrong. I hope in 6 weeks I'm wrong. You get all this money, but be prepared. So when the appraisal came in at exactly what we listed it for, and that rarely, if ever, happens. But I was kind of like, whew. And then I was kind of like, it would have been nice to get the money, but it wasn't a shock to them. Yes. So we were able to move on, got the property. But if I take that to them and they're thinking they're getting $15,000 more, now I've got an upset seller,
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. And sometimes you're playing with house money too, right? If you go over asking, and let's just say, it's not going to appraise for that amount of money. Let's say it's $20,000 over asking. It appraises for $10,000 over asking.
Right.
You're preparing your seller, right? You're
right.
We're still playing with house money here. We were expecting this, and we got 10,000.
We got this. Yeah, absolutely. And it's much better. A lot of agents, and I mentor and work with a lot of my pre-licensed agents when they come out, because I don't think that a lot of companies are given the instruction or the leaders, the training that we were getting 30 years ago. Is just not possible in today's market in a lot of places and a lot of business models. But put it all out front, because and everybody who's listening who's been in this more than 20 minutes knows that it's going to come back. It's going to come back and bite you in the end. Mm-hmm. So let's get it out there. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. And that's a lot with circling back negotiation. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Okay. This is where we are, and this is the market we're in. And as an agent, we have to look at all of those. As a sales professional, that's what all comes in. That's what our job is, to get educated and prove our value.
Absolutely. Getting to proving value, and we touched upon this a little bit earlier when you were talking about commissions in a listing appointment. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. And so one thing that I always found, both you and I, have been in management, and one thing that I always found were agents were very quick to give away their value. Right.
Yes.
And because in a lot of cases, it's the easy thing, or maybe you feel a little uncomfortable in a situation where someone's asking you about commissions and you give in, to what they want. If you go on a listing appointment, how do negotiation techniques, it's because it's not just about negotiations when you're making offers or representing somebody.
No.
A lot of times it's in that listing appointment, right? So what advice would you give to somebody? You talked about, if you can reiterate just, saying that you're not willing to cut your commission and just shut up. That's one technique. What other things do you kind of recommend if you're going on a listing appointment?
The other things that I have used is, and everything I'm telling you is something I've stole from somebody else in another class. I haven't had an original thought since 1979, but it's, if I'm going to give my money away that quick, how quickly am I going to give your money away?
Yep.
Mr. and Mrs. Seller, or Mr. whatever the case may be. How, I need to, and then I also say, this is how my business model works. I need to make, this is worked it out. I have a business plan. I have a budget. I'm shocked. I don't know why, at the number of agents who don't have a business plan, who don't have a budget, who don't know how much money they spend every year, because it just I have a separate checking account, a separate credit card. Everything goes through my business. So I know exactly how much money I need to make. Now my kids have grown, so I need a lot less money now than I used to need. Okay. But I still need to know this is now do some of them. Yes. Some of them come in and they sell in 5 days. But again, you have to move the seller away from, you only worked on this for 1 day. No, because we're just starting now. We got 6 weeks of going on. And as you said, the buyers have remorse, things happen. Pre-qualification letters and commitment letters aren't what they used to be, and it's just harder and harder and harder. I also have a list, which I will happy to share when I come up and teach with you guys, of I think it's 181 things that I do. And again, I borrowed that from, with permission, with a good friend, instructor Frank Serio, who's a CRS instructor. But now, do I do every one of those 181 things? Of course not. But I could, and the possibility of it selling, professional photography, everything that we go through, and just the keepers of the information, the true information, is what because to every agent that's watching, and this, you'll hear it again if I come up to teach there, is, I'm going to do my Zillow spiel now, and nobody can raise their hand, but I guarantee you almost everybody would raise their hand if I said, who loves Zillow or who hates Zillow, and everybody would raise their hand. You have to stop. Okay. Because Zillow is your client's 12-year-old golden retriever laying on the floor who they love, and you just kick their golden retriever when you tell them it's unreliable, you can't depend on it, don't use it, blah, blah, blah. It's a good tool, but I am the expert, okay? And I don't want to sound cocky, and it comes across because I joke a lot, and I joke a lot with my clients, but I need them to know that I've been doing this for a long time, and even when I was doing it for a short period of time, I took the time to learn, and they need us, they need us, and they don't know it is the problem.
Yeah. And, going back to value and what's our value proposition, how do we create value, and how do we express that value is always the key. And, a couple things that I've learned through the years in negotiation was, I don't know if you know Chris Voss, but he used to.
I do. He's actually the book that I'm telling everyone. We talked about books the other day. It's on the top of my pile right here. Never Split the Difference.
So Chris is great. Chris is great, and he has a masterclass. And I'm watching his masterclass, and he talks about the quote unquote the F-bomb, right? And in this case, that's fair. The word fair.
Yes.
And so one of the things I always used, excuse me, I've always used at listing appointments is, I would like to help you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, with the commission. And I know that, it may seem like, you want some money off of that commission, but it wouldn't be fair to my other clients who I charge this percentage to, and the word fair is in negotiations. You could probably speak on this better than I could. The word fair is always, Chris calls it the F-bomb because it is so powerful.
It is very powerful. And everybody, I not every person, but the majority of the people out there, they want to be fair. They don't want to feel like they got the, not everybody, because we've all run into those. But I mean, and it wouldn't be fair. And that's what you need to look at. Like, I charged the last 12 people this X percentage, and I'm going to cut for this person, or I'm going to cut for this person. And sometimes the most powerful negotiating tool is closing up your folder and saying, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Yep. I can't help you. I mean, it's just not a perfect fit. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And the number of times I've done that, Jason, is most of the time they're like, well, wait a minute, come back. Let's talk about this. But I don't want to get on an impasse with somebody. When I first started in real estate, I'd take any listing at any price, no matter what. If they told me it was worth 250 in a 175 neighborhood, I'm all in, okay? Because I just needed something to do. But now, let's be realistic. Let's talk about, and I have one little tip that I like to use, but you need to be really careful with this because it can backfire and they will ask you to leave. But if you're stuck in a listing appointment and you just can't get them to the price where you know that it's going to be a reasonable price, just when you get to just move on past the price. Let's say it's a 725 they want in a $600,000 neighborhood. It's got to be a big number right now. And so, you get to the commission and then you scratch out the number and add 10 to that number. Just right in front of them, because it's powerful. Scratch it out and add 10. And I did this one time, and they were good friends of mine. And I said, and she said, "You're going to charge me that much? We're friends. You sold me this house 20, on and on and on." And I said, "Lisa, if you want a miracle, you're going to have to pay for it." Okay. And so the husband got it right away. She was still pissed. And he said, "Honey, he's telling you you're overpricing your house." Okay. So you have to be really careful with that, because when it backfires, it's ugly and you are asked to leave quickly.
So the big question is, are you still friends?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I got the house at the list. I got it listed at the price I want, and still, although I haven't talked to him all, so maybe not, but yeah, we did list the house. We did sell it and they had moved out of the area, but it's little things. And I use humor a lot, and it's not everybody. Like, if you're not comfortable with humor, figure out what you're comfortable with, because you've got to use that when you're coming across, or else you become across fake. And nobody wants to work with somebody who's fake. And
you bring up a great point about, we talk a lot about scripting, right? And, we different phrases that, different systems use, or, just universal scripting where you can practice. And sure, that works to a point, but I always had a problem with that because, like you had just said, it's not your voice, right? You have to find your voice and what works for you. And going back to that, we were talking about, sellers getting angry that their houses sell so quickly and wanting to cut your commission. But, I learned my lesson years ago when I was a newer agent in the business. This was probably about 13, 14 years ago. I had a listing appointment, and this client of mine, who is still my client today, and I really like him, but he said to me, we were going back and forth on pricing, and it got a little contentious, and we kind of split the difference. And I said, "Okay, we'll try this price for 30 days. And if it doesn't work, you have to give me your word that we will lower the house to my price that I really want." Yeah. And he said to me, and he's dead serious. And he said, "You know what? Fine, we'll try it your way. But if this house sells in 3 days, I'm going to be really, really angry." And I kind of was taken aback, being a young agent. I didn't know how to kind of deal with that. Nowadays, I feel like all the work that you're doing is beforehand right now to get the house as presentable as possible, Absolutely. To accurately price it up front, to make sure that all the hard work and the marketing is done before you even hit the ground running. And that's why we're selling in 2 or 3 days. And that's why you should be happy with my service.
Absolutely. Because again, I don't know how long you've been doing it, but you've been in for a while. Years ago, you could wait and take pictures. Video wasn't even an option. Okay. But if you're putting a house on the market today, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but if you're putting a house on the market today without a video, less than 50% of the eyes are even going to look at it. They're not even going to click on it. They want to see video. Yep. They want to see hundreds of pictures, as many as you can put on, and then pet peeve time. If you're taking your own pictures, and some people are good at it, I'm not, but if you're going to take pictures of the bathroom, for the sake of whatever higher power you believe in, please put the toilet seat down. Okay. I can't do it anymore, but back to what you said, split the difference. Now you're a Chris Voss master student. You never should split the difference, but that's where our minds automatically go. Yeah. Our minds automatically go. And that Chris Voss, I learned it from him. Again, I didn't make it, but he was an FBI negotiator, for those of you who haven't heard of him. But he said, if I had 6 hostages and I split the difference, I would be happy if three got out. The other 3's family, and they're not so happy. Yep. So, and he also has a tip, which I've used. And I actually had a client who had read the book, and he came across is, let's say you're at 380 and I'm at 400. and of course, both our minds are going immediately to 390. Chris Voss says come in at, 392, $768.42. So it really it seems like you put a lot of thought into it, when really it's just another number. You know what I mean? It's just another number. So there are things. That book is phenomenal. I've read it a couple of times. I watch his videos. I really enjoy, the way he teaches as well.
He is pretty amazing and very intimidating when you see him in action. It's pretty impressive. So last question along those lines, do you ever use the mirroring technique in real estate at all, where you kind of repeat that? So for those that technique? So for those that are listening, the last 3 words that someone says, or the last phrase that someone says in a conversation, the mirroring technique basically takes that last phrase and you just repeat it back to that person. In a curious tone, and it gets them talking more and more, and they give the general rule is they give up more and more information as you keep doing it.
I don't know. I guess that I do use, but the thing that I've learned is, and I had said this before, is as agents, we think we've got to talk constantly. We need to do more listening, less talking. And I'm getting more information as we're going along in my buyer's consultation, in my listing appointment. I'll throw something out there, and, because back when I got in business, the old saying was buyers are liars, right? And now listers are liars as well. Okay. So you need to find their true motivation. And the more information, just as back to that lady with her grandchild, the more information you can gather, the more you can move away from where they might be stuck. A lot of times it's the emotion of leaving a house that you've had for the last 40 years, or whatever the case may be. Or maybe it's a beach home where there's been, you haven't been there for 40 years, but there's been a lot of happy memories there. But if the mirroring technique is it's putting the ball back in their court. Okay. So you throw it back to them. And just as you said, they start talking more. Okay. And you have to get them to open up, and I think there's times, and we've all gone, and there's 2 different parties, there's 2 partners, or whatever the case may be. One hates you and one loves you. Okay. It's just good cop, bad cop. I always tell my pre-license class, if you're overly sensitive and your feelings get hurt easy, you should ask for a refund now, because you're not going to make it in this business. Okay. So we got to toughen up a little bit. We've got to listen more, and we've got to be able to present our value quickly. I mean, because particularly in today's world, people are already thinking about other things while you're trying to tell them, you're the greatest negotiator that has ever been. Just a little plug for this class real quick, because I know we're running out of time.
Yep.
And I actually probably went over time, but this is, as I told you the other day, one of the best classes that I teach. I really enjoy this class because the second day of this class, you actually get hands-on, and it's not about me standing up there for 8 hours telling you everything I do. It's about you getting down and actually practicing this. I umpired travel baseball and Little League baseball for 20 years. And I had an umpire who taught me, and he said, stand in front of a mirror and practice your third strike call, and I did. And I loved it, so it's the same thing. Practice it. Practice it with your spouse. Practice it we negotiate with our kids all the time. If you have little kids, you have a superior negotiator right there. Learn from them. So practice. So, and I'm sorry, I'm probably going way over the time, but I'm passionate about this.
No, I really enjoyed talking to you, Harry. And I want to make sure that I stick to your schedule today, but it was great to have you on. And yes, I'm sure that we will be seeing you in the future. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and take care.
Thank you very much.
So the conversation that I had with Harry really stuck out to me a few ways. One is Harry believes that you should always try and get to a place where everybody can be satisfied in the transaction, right? You can get to the finish line, the clients are satisfied, and you get paid. That doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is going to get 100% of what they want. But if everybody gives a little bit in the process, you should be able to get to that finish line. I always say that if there's a buyer that wants to buy and a seller that wants to sell, there is always a deal that is waiting waiting to happen there. If one side does not want to make it work, chances are it's not going to, based on, what everybody wants out of the deal. So always keep that in mind with your negotiations. Also, when you're on listing appointments, don't be too quick to give away your commission. I think that's a chronic problem in our industry right now. We have to provide value, and we have to be able to explain that value when we're out on a listing appointment. And if you don't think that you can do that effectively, then I would practice what you're trying to accomplish when you go out on a listing appointment. That's it for this week's episode. We'll be back shortly with a new guest, a new topic. And again, if you want me to touch on something that you think is relevant and happening right now in the world of real estate, please reach out to me, jason.ostrowski@foxroach.com. And in the meantime, make sure that you stay safe, stay selling, and catch us on our next episode of the Everything Real Estate Podcast.